opportunities for students with disabilities in the community. Thank you so much for joining us today.
It's my privilege.
We had met a couple months back at ESE Parent Day, and you had talked to us about a program for allowing students to have more opportunities in the employment field. Can you just kind of give everyone at home a little bit of information about what you're doing to make sure that these opportunities are available?
Okay, well, what I've actually developed is something for the parents, a tool for the parents to be able to use. And my hope is to be able to get these tools or these portfolios into the schools at the earliest age possible. Typically, transition starts being talked about at age 14, and then 16 more aggressively in the school system, I'm saying, with trying to help students find jobs or find a job. And the way that I see it is that we as parents need to be much more advocates, much more proactive in starting when our kids are little. And the way that I do that is by taking pictures of everything that my son does, every activity. The camera is constantly with me, and then I try to categorize those, looking and seeing where his interests are lying. And then trying, he's only 10. He's not anywhere near ready for the workforce. But I'm trying to show parents that if we start looking now, then as we're going, we're talking to our kids about what they want to do, and we're seeing where their interests are. And it might be that when we ask them, what do you want to be when you grow up? Okay, let me back up a minute. Most parents with kids with a disability of any kind don't ask their kids what they want to be when they grow up. It's not even a question because the parents don't think it's going to be an issue, because they assume their kids aren't going to work. Now that sounds really, that might sound really generalized, but typically, I'm saying, now there are parents like myself who we start thinking about what our kids are going to do when they grow up, when they're 3 months old or 3 years old or whatever, because we have high hopes, and maybe some of us are idealistic, maybe some of us, our goals are way too high, but I'd rather have my goals be too high than be so low that he has no goals, nothing to hit. So my hope is that I can help parents with kids with whatever their exceptionality is to be looking toward the future. A lot of the reason why that may be happening is because we're so focused on their education, of making sure they're in the right placement as far as the classroom is concerned. We get so bogged down with life itself that we're not looking at the future at all. And I'm hoping that by switching parents' viewpoint, of switching the way they're looking, that it will not only be preparing their child, but giving them hope. The kids are they're not needing that hope right now because they're little and they're not thinking that way, but the parents do. The parents desperately need hope. I remember, when my son was diagnosed with Down syndrome, there was a huge sense of grief because of what we expected him to possibly be, and thinking initially that those things would never happen. And what we've learned is that there's no reason for those things not to happen. They just might happen at a different level or in a different way.
Right.
One of the categories that I have for Keaton is motivational speaker. He has a very difficult time right now with speech. He's very difficult to understand. So to think about him being a motivational speaker seems ridiculous. But if we don't start now, we're not going to be helping groom him toward that. And that's one thing that we can see could very well be what he'll do, because he loves being in the limelight. He loves being right in front of everyone and letting everyone know what he has to say, even if no one understands what it is he's saying. Okay, another one would be a musician. Another one, you ask a child, what do you want to do, what do you want to be, and they may say a professional football player. Well, the likelihood of a person with Down syndrome being in the NFL is not very good. It's just probably not going to happen. I'm not going to say it's not, because you just never know.
Exactly.
But typically that's not going to be something that will happen. So then we try to see, okay, he loves sports, he loves football. What occupation could he have that would gear toward that? And in my workshops, I tell a story of a young man who, that was his dream, was to be an NFL football player. The job that he got was in a TV station, a small, very rural TV station, where they had a room for Monday night football, Sunday football, Thursday night football, and his job is to monitor all of the different games, to monitor the screens as those games are going on. So he's not out there physically playing football, but he's absolutely saturated with it, and he's making decisions of what's going to happen and when it's going to happen in that. So that's just a very small example of what a kid can do. And cautioning parents that when your child says they want to do this thing that you know there's just really no way it's ever going to happen, instead of just telling them, well, you can't do that, of trying to help them find a way to make at least a piece of that happen. Another example is of a young lady who wanted to be a French chef. That was her dream. I'm going to be a French chef. And with her exceptionalities, with the shortcomings that she had, that was just not going to happen. But the job coach started her out, found a restaurant, went to a restaurant, found a chef and a manager who were willing to at least allow her to try. And she went in and started with making salads, where she wasn't using any knives, just putting the salads together, covering them, putting them away, which seems like a menial task, but she was in a kitchen, she was doing this job, and then gradually her skills, they would let her do more and more, and got to be where she actually is one of the sous chefs in a French restaurant. So there's ways to make our kids' dreams come true. The title that I've named my workshop or my program is Everyone Works. And everyone can, no matter if they have even just one item of their body, just one finger even, that moves, and sometimes not even that, they can have a job. We just have to get real creative, and we have to be advocates. If we expect our kids to do that on their own, it's not going to happen. But with us advocating for them, it can. There are and will be opportunities.
As much as it is the parents' responsibility to try to advocate, what message do you have for employers who might be afraid to give opportunities to students with disabilities, or just really don't know too much about the disabilities in general? What message should you try to give them to try to provide more opportunities?
Well, in that regard, again, it's part of that's going to fall into parents of keeping our kids out in the community. Letting our kids be visible, letting everyone see our kids and see how much they are alike, because they are. We all have disability, whatever it might be. I am height challenged, but I can always grab a stool, or I can find someone who will help me get something that's up way beyond my reach. And that, that sounds ridiculous, but it's really not.
Right.
I mean, Keaton's going to be able to do things that I can't do because he's obviously going to be taller than I am. He's getting very tall. But with the employers, if we're exposing them to our kids, we're taking, like, if it's they want to work in a restaurant, if we're taking them to restaurants and letting the managers and the owners see our kids in action, see that there's nothing to be afraid of, seeing that there is a real person within that shell. This is not a disability. This is a person. If we're taking them to Marine World, let's say one of our kids' desire is to be an animal trainer and they want to train dolphins. Take them to that place frequently. With the zoo, the things that our kids love to do, but exposing them. And it's not just exposing the kid, it's exposing